Hello everyone and welcome to a truly outstanding game from the Aimchess US Rapid preliminaries. It's Alireza Firouzja versus Magnus Carlsen and it features my favorite opening with black, the Scandinavian defense. Not the line that I enjoy, but still it's a very nice game, and it's well, it could have gone either way, but the way it went is definitely the most enjoyable. So without further ado, let's check it out and see why I chose this game to show. Alireza with the white pieces opens with e4. We have d5 by Magnus going for the Scandinavian defense. E captures, queen captures, and now knight to c3. And I often mention this. There are usually three popular retreats with the queen as your queen is attacked here. You could go to d8, you could go to a5, you could go to d6, and even queen to e6 check has been played. I think Magnus even played this at one point. Maybe it was a blitz game or a rapid game, I don't know. But here we have queen to a5. If you're interested about this queen to d6 line, I made a very nice, well, it's not a very long video, but it's a fun short video on how to play this queen to d6 line. So if you want to check it out, it will be the first link in the description below. But here, queen to a5. So this is the basically the mostly played line. We have d4 and now knight to f6. We have knight to f3 and bishop to f5. Again, bishop to f5 and bishop to g4 are both played. It's a matter of preference, so you could try what works best for you. So here, bishop to f5 by Magnus and knight to e5. A very nice tool against the most retreats of the queen in the Scandinavian. If the queen is on d6 or on a5, the knight can easily come to c4 and gain a nice tempo against the black queen. So here we have c6. The thing is, if you try something like e6, then it's very easy to make progress with white. We play g4, attack the bishop here, and once the bishop moves the bishop to g2, and we put pressure on this g7 pawn and gain some nice development. So here Magnus stops this by playing c6 right away, and now bishop to c4 by Firouzja. We have e6 and now g4. Attacking Carlsen's bishop to g6 and h4. So this has all been played before many times. Nothing new here. The bishop is not in any danger of being trapped. You always have bishop to e4 followed by bishop to d5. Knight b to d7 challenging white's knight on e5. And here knight captures on d7. We have knight captures on d7 and now h5, forcing the bishop to retreat to e4. So bishop to e4. And now there are a lot of games that reach this position. Rook to h3 is the move that can be played here. There's even a very nice game from 1997 from the Beal tournament, Anand versus Joe Laurier, where Anand won a very nice game with rook to h3. But here Alireza just castles, and now as the knight is no longer pinned, the black is in danger of losing the bishop. So Magnus moves the bishop back, and now we have knight captures on d5 and c captures on d5. You don't want to capture with the e pawn because then you allow white some free tempi here, so maybe not the way to go. So instead, c captures on d5, attacking white's bishop to d3, and now Magnus plays bishop to d6. Again, this has all been played before. We have queen to f3, developing the queen, and now black has a couple of very interesting moves here. For example, kingside castle is a known move, queen to c7 is a known move, queen to d8 is a known move, but the move Magnus plays has never been played before, and he goes queenside castles, and it is now only as of move 15 that we have a completely new game. So as usual, when we have castles on opposite sides of the board, it's usually a race, and whoever strikes first will win the game. So here we have bishop to e3. You could go for queen captures on f7. Magnus allows this, but if you go for this, then Magnus will play this rook to d8, this rook to f8, and he's gonna get a lot of development in. And well, Alireza is interested in attacking on the queen side, not grabbing a pawn. So instead, after Magnus castled queenside, we have bishop to e3. Now he's ready to play a3, b4, c4, and try and bust open the queen side. We have g6 by Magnus. He of course wants to open up the g file, and Alireza prevents this by playing h6. We have rook h to f8. Now defending this pawn, and at some point probably e5 will be played. We have a3 by Alireza, preparing b4 and c4, and now f5 by Magnus. So again, he really wants to open up some lines towards the white king, and now c4. As we said, this is a race, and whoever starts the attack first usually wins the game. We have e5 by Magnus, now with the threat of e4, which would win the bishop. So b4, attacking black's queen, queen to c7, and now you can't really capture this pawn because e4 is still a threat, so c5, attacking the bishop here. So now now this doesn't really make all that much sense because we're going to capture the bishop and we're still attacking the queen. So you having this double attack here doesn't really do anything. So instead, after c5, Magnus just retreats with the bishop to e7, and now we have bishop to b5. So now e4 no longer attacks both the queen and the bishop, but Magnus still plays it. We have e4, and now queen to h3. The problem is if you try something like queen to f4 to trade off the queens, it's just much better for black. For example, captures, captures, and now the bishop controls g5. We're going to play g5, and after the bishop moves, we're going to play f4. And yes, white does have a nice expansion on the queen side, but black structure here is just much better. So instead, after e4, we have queen to h3, and now Magnus continues pushing with f4. We have bishop to d2, and now you have to decide how you want to continue this game, whether you want to play king to b8, get the king away from the c file as it could open up very soon, or try something like rook to f6, maybe gain more control over the c6 square and also allow the doubling of the rooks on the f file. Magnus decides on bishop to g5, so he gains more control over the e3 square, and he wants to play e3 at some point. Here we have c6 by Alireza. He has to, like I said, it's a race, you have to bust open something. And now knight to f6. The problem with capturing here on c6 is that although it can be played, it's very difficult to play it. Rook 8 to c1 now just threatens to win the c6 pawn and the queen. And after we defended with rook to f6, we can still capture. It's not a problem. And after rook captures, we're going to play rook captures, queen captures, and now rook f to c1. And black has to give up the queen. Captures, captures, and black could probably still play this as he does have a monster pawn chain here. It would be very difficult. So instead, after c6, we have knight to f6 by Magnus, and now c captures on b7 with check. We have queen captures on b7 and rook 8 to c1 with check. King to b8, and now bishop to c6, putting pressure on Carlsen's queen. We have queen to e7 now, gaining more control over the e3 square, as that's why Magnus plays the bishop on g5, and now rook to c5, allowing white to maybe double up on the c file. Rook to b5 check can be played, then rook can come to b7. A lot of ideas here for white. Magnus continues pushing, well, his own agenda. He plays e3. We have captures, captures, and now bishop back to e1. You could also maybe throw in a rook to b5 check first, but I guess you could always play that. So bishop to e1, and now comes knight to e4 by Magnus. Here, a nice attempt is a rook to d6. It kind of prevents this whole idea of rook to b5 check, king to c8, and rook to b7. Now you can block with knight to d7, and it kind of holds. So maybe this is the way to go for black. But Magnus plays knight to e4 instead, and now comes a very unpleasant move from Alireza, and that is queen to h2 with check. So there are a lot of moves black can play here, but none of them really work. And I'm just going to show a very fun line that seems to be the most resilient one for black, but still kind of insufficient. For example, knight to d6, we block the check like this. Rook captures on f8, rook captures, and now we attack the pinned piece. Bishop to g3, now attacking it once more. So you have to defend it. Rook to f6, and now we capture on d5. Now we're attacking the knight 3 times and also attacking the bishop here. And now black's best hope is bishop to f4, kind of throw in this trick. Where if white captures on f4, then we throw in pawn to e2, and then black is just winning. Because after bishop captures on d6, we're going to capture with the rook, and the white doesn't really have a good reply here. e1 check is coming, and that's it. We're going to bring another queen into the game. Not much for white to do here. But what you could do instead, after this bishop to f4 move, is just play rook to e5. So whether this would or would not have been played, it's hard to say, but it's such a super fun line. I decided to show it because now you're attacking the queen. If bishop captures, then you're going to capture with the pawn, attacking the knight and rook, and also the queen will no longer be defending the e3 pawn. So we would probably see something like just queen moves to f7, and now we capture on f4, rook captures on f4, and queen to g3, going after the e3 pawn. Rook captures on d4, rook captures on e3, and now white is just better here. It does seem like the white king is wide open, but after rook d1 check, let's say king h2, rook d2 check, we can simply play bishop back to g2. We could also go to h3, but then we have to allow queen to f1 check. So we just go back bishop to g2, and we get this position where white would, well, be much better. Just wanted to show you what happens with the knight to d6 idea that's seemingly most resilient. But here Magnus played king to c8, and here he allows a most thematic finish for Alireza. So feel free to pause the video here and win the game for Alireza in the coolest way possible. There are two winning moves here, but I always try to get you guys to find the most aesthetically pleasing one. So while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on always going for that beautiful, beautiful move. Rook captures on f8 is winning, but here bishop to d7 check is the one that we were looking for. So now it's a double check from the rook and the bishop, and you don't really have an option here. If you move the king to b7, then, well, the queen no longer covers the c7 square. We can deliver a check, king a6, and b5 is just checkmate. So what Magnus did is, of course, he captured the bishop, but now comes rook to c7 with check. And now, although you could play king to e8 and make the game go on a bit longer, for example, rook captures queen, bishop captures rook, and now queen to e5, and the game kind of goes on, but black is completely busted. Magnus said, well, I better just give AGADMATOR a nice position for his thumbnail, and he played king to e6, allowing Alireza to deliver a checkmate in one, which you all see, as you guys are incredibly strong players. So here Alireza played queen to e5, and this is now checkmate, which is always just very, very enjoyable when players of these strengths allow a checkmate like this to appear on the board. And there we have it, our nice position from the thumbnail. I even used a nice yellow color for the king, just so you guys, you know, get a nice feel for the position. That's the game. A lot of you guys have requested it, and I'm very glad that you did, as it's, well, very, very enjoyable. So keep using hashtag suggestion. I'm going to go over your suggestions and show the games that you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys enjoyed it once again. I would like to thank Alan Goyet, David Kimura, Vlad Ularu, Mark Thompson, and Annie McCain for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of this very nice tournament, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.